Sure. We get started with the Portland Parks Board meeting Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. Starting at 5:01, Michelle, if you can give us the honors of the roll call.
Corbin,
Here.
Alana. Here. For the last time. Bonnie.
Present.
Casey.
Here.
I see you, Casey.
Can you not hear me?
David,
Here.
Chris. Here. Adam. See Adam. Adrian. Aaron.
Here.
Sabrina. See Sabrina. Allie.
Here.
Suen.
Here.
Jonathan.
Here.
Matt. Who do I see?
Here.
Okay. Patty. Here. And Jessica.
And we also have Adam here. It looks like he's stuck as a participant.
Oh, sorry, I missed the participants.
So go ahead and since we are at quorum, get started. Any public comments? We don't believe we have any in person. Anybody that wishes to sign up or speak during comments, public comments online, please raise your hand. Doesn't look like there's any public comments online. And it looks like we have Adrian has joined us.
Yes.
Wonderful. General announcements, if I can start that off. There have been a couple emails out there, so if you can please read through them. Need a response regarding the board retreat when you're available. And then there's an email about voting for, well, not voting for, but picking new candidates for our co-chair person, because a lot of us are believing us. For good things, good things. If you can please respond to that. Chris.
And the nominations are open for the two positions that will be open on the Portland Parks Board. The application went live on March 26th and will be open until April 25th. So if you know folks who may be interested on serving on the board, please send out the application materials and the link to them. That's in the email that Michelle sent out and also that Dr. Corbin sent out as well.
Thank you so much, Chris. Any other general announcements? All right, we have one, I believe, from Kelly Torres with the Vibrant Communities.
Yes, hi.
Welcome.
My announcement is twofold. So the first announcement is that I am no longer representing the council office when I come. I'm representing the Vibrant Community Service area because I am the new chief of staff to Sonia Schmansky, who I will introduce you to officially here, and maybe Dina and Todd would like to also add some flavor to it. Sonia is our new deputy city administrator, and that went into effect on April 1st. So we are here as a team in solidarity to be with you tonight.
Want to add some flavor?
I can, I'll add some flavor. And you do the cherry on top.
Yeah.
So I did send an email, I forwarded an email to the full board announcing these changes, so it shouldn't be news if you've checked your emails. I just want to say, and I said this at our senior management team meeting, those of you who know Kelly Torres worked for Parks for quite a while before she moved over, I think twice, right? Worked for Parks twice. And so we have a long history working together. So I'm really excited to have her back in the fold, closer to operations. And I think it's going to really help us as we navigate this new form of government and create these new offices. And Sonia, bless her heart, was pretty much hired me when she worked as chief of staff to Nick Fish. So we're going way back as well. So we've got a really good deep bench now. And so we're just really thrilled about these two appointments. And They've jumped in with 2 feet. They've moved it onto the 8th floor, like we're going, we're moving. So without further ado, I'll introduce them.
Oh, well, thank you. We're here mostly to introduce ourselves, share a little bit about our roles. Talk about what's coming up that feels really exciting in the category of opportunities, and then I would love to hear the same from you now or later. And take questions if you have them. We don't have many answers, but we're not the only ones who don't have a lot of answers about important things coming up. So would love to hear them anyway. I'm Sonia Shemansky. I use she, her pronouns. I am the very newly minted first Deputy City Administrator for the Vibrant Communities Service Area. I have a group of colleagues coming online in the other service area deputy roles over the next few months. And I hope that we're fully up and running as a team a few months from now, but we are first out of the gate and we really are moving quickly to build systems and structures and processes that help us be successful in this new configuration. A little bit about, well, I'll go in order over a couple of things. I worked for Nick Fish for many years. I joined the city in 2008. I was with him until he died in 2020. Then spent a bit of time up in the mayor's office. And then I thought something other than City Hall would be nice. So I came over to OMF and I worked on a program to spend the city's $200 million federal rescue plan grant. In 2022, I came up to the CAO office and I joined the CAO office team as Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, working with Mike Jordan. And since last Monday, I've been in this new deputy role with this service area. In my prior role as DCAO, I was project sponsor for the overall city transition work. So I've been pretty deep in the guts, building the architecture and the strategy to get us from here to there on the transition. And I am so excited and energized about being in this other role, part of the same effort, supporting the same cause to move us into that new form of government successfully and as happily as we can manage. And as Adina said, I haven't been in the Parks Bureau, but I have been a close partner to the Parks Bureau for a long time. I am a super fan. I am familiar with enough to feel like this is a little bit of a homecoming for me as well. And I'm so excited about the opportunities of this whole service area notion. The primary feature of which is we're in rational, we think, groups of bureaus that are fixed rather than being spread here and there and assigned out to commissioners according to whatever moves the mayor to do so. This stability gives us a chance to think really differently about how we partner in the service areas, how we share resources, how we align priorities, how we support each other. I just made a note, should the other parts of the service area promote the board openings on their social media channels? So it takes forms from very, very small to very, very big strategic alignment opportunities. We're thinking about that already. We have big lists of connecting the dots. We're also thinking about, well, what are the meetings and who needs to spend time with whom and what is the work that's coming up? So we're firing on all fronts in this startup phase. And I think the last thing I'll say is just a real brief kind of at a glance, what is the work that's coming up? I think of it as having a few different orientations. One is we will continue to be very busy understanding and advancing the priorities of the commissioner and the service area itself in partnership. Two is we'll be looking sideways at our service area colleagues and working together to figure out what does it mean to be a city in a service area structure? How do we work together? What are we doing? What is the point of all of this? There are, again, large and small questions about that. And then, well, two more. You reminded me of a fourth today. One, the third is being really intentional about building an identity within the service area, a culture within the service area that is under the umbrella of vibrant communities, that is of a piece, that everybody feels connected to, and that everybody understands as part of a larger city culture in service of a larger city mission. We can only take that so far without a citywide strategic plan, but by gosh, we're gonna go that far until we have one. And then the last area of focus is to continue being a good partner in some of the citywide work that council has recently directed. That includes things like consolidated permitting, the natural resources work, integrated security, moving management of our arts venues from one part of the city into our part of the city. And I'm sure there are a handful more that are important and recent, but those come to mind immediately. So we're gonna be pointed in a lot of directions, doing a lot of things, but all in service of, we talked with the commissioner a few minutes ago about arriving in 2025 in pretty good, pretty good order, operating. Machinery should be running, and we should be ready to receive and implement the strategic direction of that new council as soon as they're ready to offer it. So it's thrilling work. We're doing it already. We'll have more partners soon, and it's gonna be really, really exciting. We hope. In addition to whatever else it is, it will be exciting. So that's the work, that's us. And probably that did generate some questions or thoughts, which I'd love to hear.
I can definitely open it up for questions. I do want to make sure that we stay on time, so we have about 15 minutes that we can dedicate to this. So opening the floor to the board. Any questions?
I love that you're keeping things on track like that.
Get her again.
So there might not, it doesn't look like there's any questions right now, but there might be in the future. So
Marinate.
yes, and I think maybe there's an opportunity to create a space during our retreat when we have more time. We can invite you into maybe being a part of that so we can have a deeper conversation. Other thoughts of the board? Joanne, go ahead, please.
Welcome, welcome back. What do you see as your frequency in interfacing with the board?
Good question. I don't know yet. I don't know my frequency interacting with Kelly yet. It's an important question that is part of a much, we're finding all these practical questions about the calendar really are anchored in really deep questions about what's our role? Where do we need to be focused and what are we accountable for? So we don't need to really answer that before we figure out what the calendar looks like, but they are connected and we want to keep eyes on that bigger strategic piece. I don't know. I'd love as a starting place to hear what you'd like it to be.
And I'll just dovetail on that.
Please go ahead. Director Lund.
With Kelly departing as chief of staff to the commissioner, TJ McHugh is stepping into that role. So there's another opportunity for another connection with the commissioner. So I think it's beyond the question of how they envision themselves interacting with the board, but there's a lot of potential touch points. So we really have to think strategically about what makes most sense in terms of board business and the intersectionality between either the commissioner as a council member or the DCAs as in a new office. And it might be multiple in different ways. So I think we have to be a little open about it and sort of kick the tires and see how it goes and then and try to be flexible.
Yeah, and we can try and we can adjust, and I think we'll be doing that on many, many things.
I'll say this, that the chairs before me, including Bonnie, who was the chair before me, really wanted to have the presence of folks from, from City Hall here. And I have to say thank you, Kelly, for definitely showing up over the last year or so and really having that presence. And we would like that to continue to happen. How that's going to look like, looks like it's going to be a little bit of a conversation, but to keep that going. So Just throwing it back out there to the board, it looks like I have a hand raised. Adrian, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Really nice to meet you, and I love all the things that you had to say. And I want to know your opinion about something that has been a concern for parks and trees. I'm actually also on the Urban Forestry Commission, and with the reorganization, one of the major concerns, and that is not being in with other infrastructure. And many of us working in this field feeling that obviously our parks and trees are as vital an infrastructure as water, as sewers, as, name it, by sort of being carved off, are we going to be, politically weaker? And I'm really interested in your opinion, having worked, in the city for so long, worked for Nick Fish and so on. And maybe you can't answer that now. Maybe it's just too political a question. But yeah, I'd love your insights on that.
Well, I have an opinion for sure. First of all, though, where are you?
Oh, well, let me tell you, I'm in Utah. And I'm on a road trip with my trailer, which is behind me. And we're now in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. So
Dedicated.
Well, yeah.
I'm glad to have enough signal to join.
Salute you for beaming in. Boy, that's a beautiful place. It's such a good question. I have two thoughts as you're asking it. The first is around the notion of politically weaker. That is so true in this form of government. Where you are structurally, who you report to, has such influence and impact on your ability to move things. Because you're connected, you're tethered directly to an elected who has hands directly on the levers of the operations and the budget. The new structure is a different environment. The power map changes and the access points that are important and who influences what is really different. So one thought I have as you're talking is that in the new structure, everybody is reporting up through 6 people to 1 person. And so the question of where the political leverage and power is just really different. And one of the things we anticipate and expect in the new structure is a leveling. So that the particulars of the relationships and who's got juice and who's got the phone number is less important. And that helps some folks, that makes other folks feel like, well, wait a minute, I'm really good at that. What do I do now? But I think that's maybe less of a factor in that sense, which may not be what you were getting at, but that came to mind. The other is on the notion of who are we with in our service area and how much does that matter? And we talked a lot about that in the year that we were putting the org chart together and including on the particular relationship that you're talking about. Down to the level of trees and the tree program and including about parks and where parks is best served, where the work is best situated and served. Where we landed on that was, and kind of where we started was that thinking feels a little bit high-centered. The structure matters, but the structure matters, boy, a whole lot less than the working relationships and the practices that are underneath it at the program and leadership coordination level. So what comes to mind for me on that is we need to start with what are we trying to achieve with trees, with infrastructure? What is infrastructure? How do we think about it? Where does it fit into how we think about our purpose as a government and what we're trying to achieve for community? And then let's build functions and practices that get us to those outcomes. And once we've done that, the structure kind of reveals itself and becomes much less of a barrier or a facilitator of your performance. So I'm not saying, I'm sort of hearing what I'm saying, which is don't worry about those things, but just think the things that matter so much now, because we're in this funny form of government, matter less later when we get to be more intentional and when we have a more rational kind of accountability structure over all the work. Want to add anything to that?
I would just say that, from my perspective, from my chair, having 5 professional city governance and, leaders talking to each other and helping to guide these 5 service areas makes me feel like cross work is going to be even easier, right? As it stands now, it's the sort of loop, the hoops you have to go through to coordinate something at that higher level is very, very challenging because there's so many priorities that are in competition. And then the other thing I'll say is that our work with the infrastructure bureaus doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped just because we're in different service areas. And in fact, I think there's this different level of intentionality, like they go out of their way to include me. I'm part of the infrastructure bureau director meeting. It's every other week, and they all are in the same service area. And then there's me. And so we're creating a culture of inclusivity. And I believe that in large part it's permeating down. I mean, we always have struggles, but I think a lot of that is culture setting as well.
I didn't
So-
know about that meeting. I like that. Yeah, cool.
Maybe I'll state the obvious, is that elections matter. There'll be 12 council members that will set the strategic direction for the city. And 7 of them will have the fate of the city administrator in their hands. And so they're gonna matter. The values of the people that get elected, this government hopefully will reflect that. Where right now we have 5 mini mayors almost with executive authorities. That won't be the case.
Yeah, not almost. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I would also say, because of all this restructuring that's happening, a lot of folks, especially folks on board, have been questioning, what does that mean for us and our input and how the work that a lot of people have volunteered over the years, how does that get operationalized and used in thoughtful ways to really uphold the fabric of the civic work that we also bring to it. And we haven't really heard a lot about that. So the more information you can provide as it becomes available, I think it's going to be very important to people on advisory boards, people on commissions. And at this point, we are uncertain where we are within this larger understanding of the restructuring of the government.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It is largely uncertain. There is some work underway that you may or may not know about. I'll make sure that you have what I have that they.
They've been
Yeah.
made aware of the Office of Community and Civic Life's work
Yeah.
to start surveying and gathering
Yeah.
information about advisory bodies.
Again, it comes back to who's at the very highest level, who's in charge of what and who's accountable for what in that future state. So who gets advised about which things might change? For some groups, it won't at all. For some, it will change enormously right away in fundamental ways. And then what does that mean for how you're structured and what you cover and your scope and where you're pointed and who meets with you? Like all of that becomes hopefully more clear when the roles are clear and settled. You kind of have to look at each group one at a time about, okay, is that statutory? Is that practice? Is that, so yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and within our bylaws specifically, we're supposed to hold a public forum. And so making sure that information gets disseminated through us and that we can all actually hold the space for community members to come and talk to us is also important. So as I was saying before, as soon as you get wind or any information that you can impart on us, and because we also are very dedicated to this work. And I will hate for that to see that, go away because we weren't thought of. Not just our group, but boards and commissions in general.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you so much. We have a couple minutes. Any other thoughts, any questions from the board?
Well, I have a thought in that vein, which I should have started with. Thank you so much for your service to this bureau and the work and the city and sitting in this building when it looks like that outside. It's significant, the effort and energy that you commit to this. And I know how much it is valued by these leaders. I know how much it was valued by my boss when we were more closely and directly connected. And so just thank you for what you've done so far. Thanks for hanging in while things are so ambiguous. And then where we have opportunities to shape what it looks like in the future, thank you for being part of that.
Thank you. We have a really good team here. Everybody's ready to roll up their sleeves and do the work, so. We're looking forward to it. If I can speak on behalf of the board, if that's okay.
You have the gavel.
Dr. Corbin, I think Kelly and Sonia will be able to stay for a few more minutes, but they have an obligation at 6. So just when they get up and leave.
It's not something.
It's
you
not
said.
something.
I shouldn't take it personally.
Right.
Thank you, and thank you for making the time. Appreciate
Oh,
that.
their pleasure. Yeah, we appreciate it.
All right, we're gonna be moving forward to approving of the March minutes. Do we have a motion? Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any,
Is it Alana that moved? Yes.
Alana and then.
Doing what you can.
Yes, exactly. Do we have any adjustments or comments? I do have one, and Bonnie has emailed it regarding, I don't know if you were able to see the email, Michelle.
I haven't yet, but
Okay, it's in the email. So it's just a correction to the financial sustainability working group report that she emailed just a few minutes ago. So the information is there. Bonnie, do you want to say specifically if you're available to do so, so Michelle can take the note?
Yeah, it's completely inconsequential. It's just to call the report of the working group just that, as opposed to meeting minutes, which it is not. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Bonnie. I also want to put in a correction with the Gateway Green research that was done. I want to specifically say it was a first year Masters of Urban Regional Planning students that did the work with Linda. Both over the fall and winter term. Which was led by myself, Dr. Corbin and Dr. Jennifer Dill, and we were the ones that wrote the executive summary report and which was presented last month.
Okay.
Just wanted to give a shout out. It is PSU, but it's specifically the MERS. So just putting
can you
that out
send it
there.
to me in an email?
Absolutely.
Changed in the minutes.
Maybe, no, I'll do that. Thank you. Any other additions or corrections? Right, all those in favor for adopting the minutes with the friendly amendment from myself and Bonnie? Please, all those in favor? You hold up your hands. Let us know when you're good, Michelle.
Good.
Thank you. Any folks voting against? Any abstentions? It's like one abstention from each. Great. Thank you so much. Are we good, Michelle?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving forward to the director's report. Director Long.
Thank you. So as has been my my process the last few months, I'm going to talk about some citywide and bureau-wide transition items. And then open the floor for folks to ask any questions they may have about the Bureau monthly report. So with regards to city charter reform transition, the city transition team is completing updates to city code to remove references of the commissioner and other outdated language. Of course, the intent is for the code to be concise, consistent, and streamlined. So the city attorney's office reviewed the board affair working groups requested updates to the Parks Board purpose and duties section as a part of this work. And they noted that much of that language is not appropriate for their purposes. So we've had some conversations with Deputy City Attorney Linda Law. She's offered to come to the next Board of Fair Working Group meeting should further explanation be needed. But she did indicate that creating a document that helps guide the values of the board is perfectly appropriate. It's just that it can't be included in the city code amendment. So wanted to report that out. Later on in the meeting, Lauren Moreno, who's in the corner, has joined us. She's from Catalysis. She's going to provide a review of the March 22nd subject matter expert and advisory body representative workshop, including feedback that was shared related to the draft work plan and task list. The feedback received will be processed and the work plan further refined to reflect what we've heard. And I want to flag for the board that anyone is welcome to attend a future meeting. It's on 11 a.m. on April 18th, and it's going to be hosted by Urban Forestry Commission and Hub, where another version will likely be shared. The timing of this meeting was such that we didn't have a full final draft to share, but I think that everyone, I think that you'll be pleased to see the progress that's been made. And then spring budget monitoring process. The hearing for the spring bump is this Thursday, April 11th. CBO has posted their analysis and recommendations for City Council on their website. I think Todd's going to drop the link in the chat. They held a work session on the mayor's proposed spring bump this morning. And then there's going to be 3 public listening sessions that will happen tomorrow. Are all of them tomorrow? Or they're starting tomorrow.
Yeah, the 10th, 13th and 15th.
Okay.
I'll put them in, and that's for actually the upcoming, so yes. Today
Yes,
was the work session for the spring bump.
Thursday's the
and
hearing
And right, and these are for the upcoming budget for next fiscal.
for
year.
request, right, for fiscal year 24-25. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. All right. I got that straight. I'm going to leave it there because we have a pretty robust agenda beyond this, but wanted to open the floor if anyone had any questions regarding my monthly report.
Board has the floor. Suan, go ahead.
This is a quick question. What is a park naming?
When
Is
is it?
something called a park?
Yes, A Park, yeah. So A Park is formerly known as Custer Park. As Amanda Fritz, who's a former Parks Commissioner, as she retired on her way out, she renamed the park A Park, as in the letter A, to encourage us to go through a renaming process, which we have done. And I don't believe that we've named it yet, but we did go through a community engagement process. Dr. Corbin was a part of that process. And I'm not really sure where we are on it.
Oh, go ahead.
So part of the IDB Wells renaming looked at A Park and IDB Wells site. There were some recommendations, it's probably too personally, of looking at different indigenous people's names for the A Park site. And so we're hiring a consultant to help us with
Right.
that work coming up. And I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Well, we haven't had a meeting since then, so
Right.
it has gone into
Right.
this phase of the process
Right.
to really get to what the community wants to name it. It
Mhm.
was very clear that they did not want that name, but names weren't necessarily already centered to
Right.
go
Right.
forward, and so I'm looking forward to hearing
Yeah.
more about the process.
We've been trying to wait till the consultant was ready, and so that's what the process we've been, but we'll be doing at the spring this summer.
And for folks who don't know, Ida B. Wells is formerly Wilson High School, and our pool is adjacent to the school. So that's the reason why there's a lot of conversation. And we decided to look at 2 parcels that were in the same general geographic area. Do that at the same time.
And the IW Wells outdoor pool is connected to the Ivy Wells School.
Right.
Which some young folks actually encourage the process to move forward. And so there is an documentary, and I can send it out. Wonderful documentaries. Students did some really great work, and in honoring the work that they've done, they're probably like in college and adulting the best that they can nowadays to honor them. But I also have a record of Ida B. Wells writing Wilson, talking to him about having Black soldiers being able to recreate and as
Oh,
part
that's
of
so
a civil,
interesting.
rights movement before the civil rights. So if you're a history nerd and you would like to see that document, I'll definitely forward that to you. So there's these connections. I
Thanks,
love when
Dr.
things connect. Casey, are you dovetailing onto this conversation?
No.
Yeah,
Actually, can you,
that's-
I can't hear you, Casey.
you can.
Right.
You can. hear me.
You might have to hold that mic up to your mouth like you did in the past.
Go back to old school. So no, Corbin, I actually have an issue back on the budget, so I can hold for a while.
All right, I have you down. Any other concluding comments around that, Todd, around the process for a park?
Well, since we have an update on timeline, everything we can share with you.
Sounds good. All right, Casey, go ahead.
Thank you. Getting back to the budget. Any comments by the budget office as to the changes requested by Parks?
Claudia, do you want to take it or?
Sure, I'll jump in. So specifically for the spring bump?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just got the spring bump reviews from the city budget office yesterday. And they did recommend for Parks's compensation set aside request. So for those that are unfamiliar, this has been a point of discussion in the last couple of spring bumps. Parks has requested compensation set aside, which is an amount that's set aside in the general fund to fully fund the cost of living adjustment in the current year and health benefits in the current year. Because we've had the Parks levy that has, from their perspective, generated underspending. They have recommended against it in the past, but I think based on the conversations that we've had over the last couple of years and the agreement that was reached with City Budget Office before the prior budget director left, I think we've gotten to a good place there, and it was in the review. So.
Thank you. Is there a follow-up, Casey?
And Casey, I'll also note that that the spring bump work session was today, and the compensation set aside recommendations from CBO were discussed, and there were no questions from council, and we were one among many large bureaus that requested and got a positive recommendation from the city budget office. So no drama event in council, and hopefully that'll continue.
That's great. No, I appreciate it, Todd and Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Alana, go ahead.
So not specific to the report, but just kind of a general bureau question. It seems like there has been a lot of announcements lately about new projects and SDC spending. And I know that we got a report, gosh, probably 6 months or so ago about what SDCs looked like moving forward and what the projections were. And especially with the spending that we were expecting for the pool in North Portland, that was gonna, the buffer there was gonna drop pretty low, but everyone knew that was coming and there was a reason for it. Is there kind of a normal that's considered for how much should be there as a buffer for needed renovations or I know it can't be used for a regular renovation, right? But needed big things, pieces like that. And what is that and where are we at in our SDC budget? Or am I just making this up and it's not actually
Yeah,
more
so-
than usual?
No, it's
good
a good question. So we normally carry a $10 million reserve as just like a buffer. We also have things like placeholders for acquisitions and so a couple $1 million normally set aside.
On top of the 10
On top
million?
of that,
Okay.
the Central City has a number of projects that have not moved forward, Broadway corridor development, South Waterfront development. So there's actually been some SDC allocations for downtown that were there for a number of years, and so that allowed us to move forward with the skate park.
So those would
Project,
kind
for
of
instance, cash flow wise, the,
move back in to the
Yeah,
pot.
that's right.
Okay.
and, you know, just order of magnitude, the program's been bringing in between, you know, 20 to $35 million a year. And so you can think about like, that's about how many allocations we could be making in any single year. And the balance, I don't know, Claudia, you can tell me, but it's probably about $170 million right now of how much all the projects in the pipeline. What are we
Yeah,
at?
I don't think it's quite that high, but yeah, we do have a pretty significant balance with us because we've got
Yeah.
you know,
Projects in the pipeline.
yeah, lots of projects in the pipeline.
So like this program does not have a cash flow problem. We are trying to deliver projects as fast as we can to get them out and built appropriately. And so I think the financial forecast, we're in good health for the next 5 years to roll out a number of projects that are in the pipeline. And then depending on how many SDCs we'll collect in the coming years will be how many decisions we'll make going forward.
Got it.
Yeah.
You want to add to that? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say that also you noted that you've seen many announcements. We worked with the commissioner's office and our comms team to do periodic, to actually time them and do periodic announcements. So those have been planned since late last year and they're just sort
Yeah.
of rolling out. So it's not like each time we make an announcement, there's a new decision to make the allocation. He made the decisions to do the allocations all at one time. And instead of just sort of announcing them, it's been a periodic rollout. So I just
And
wanted to
some of
speak to
those
that.
is the board we knew were coming, and just because we had gotten that forecast a few months ago, it was kind of like,
Yeah,
where does that,
The
were
timing
those
was
things
off.
that were taken out before that forecast or after? And it sounds
Right.
like those were incorporated into the forecast that
They
we
were.
saw.
that's correct. Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you, Alana. Aaron, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I feel like, I don't know, I'm gonna ask a question that I already maybe know the answer to, or maybe I don't know the answer, but I always get caught up with the fact I understand the SDCs cannot be used for deferred maintenance, but we have this enormous deferred maintenance problem. And then we're talking about adding assets that will also have maintenance needs over time. And I just wonder, is there any political effort to change what we can use SDCs for? Because it just feels a little like we're in a like a carnival or so, you know, something just a little bit ridiculous, the fact that we're building new things when we have things that we know are dilapidated.
Not one at the city level. We don't have any political movement there. I think the policy is around that new development should be paying for the new amenities, whether it's a road, sewer, water, or park that goes along with that new growth in the city. And so that's what the SDC program should pay for. And if we change that policy, which you can make an argument either way, but I'll just play it out. If you change that policy so the SDC program was actually paying for repairing for what you'd have, you're basically reducing the level of service over time to the per capita, you know, population of Portland. And so that's not the policy framework we're in right now. Bonds and levies have paid for the existing system, and the SDC program has been seen to pay for the growth.
Can I just ask a follow-up so I understand
Sure.
the response?
Sure.
Because of course, as we know, with deferred maintenance, assets will go out of use if they're in disrepair. So that also is reducing, you know, what is available in different neighborhoods, et cetera. So I guess I don't quite understand conceptually the idea that we're not keeping up. It's like, anyway, we're not going to keep up if we don't, you know, fix the deferred maintenance issue.
For sure. You're right, for sure, that you have, unless you want to have a smaller park system that serves less to the nature or people in Portland, you do need major maintenance dollars, you do need operating dollars, and you do need growth dollars because we have at least a geographic inequality of the distribution of park assets in the city, just because we've grown over time with, you know, the eastern part of the city coming into the city last.
Thank you. Jessica from Portland Parks Foundation, are you trying to jump into this conversation? Add to it, or is it another question?
It is a question related to Aaron's question and
Wonderful, go ahead.
making sure I understand SCC allocation. So is when you allocate a certain amount to new development, is there ever a reserve amount set aside for future maintenance in that? Like I think about when we did, for example, the Barbara Walker Crossing, there was a maintenance fund that went along with it. Is that part of SCC funding, or can none of that be used to set aside knowing there always will be future maintenance?
Currently, it can't be set aside.
Say that one more time.
It cannot be currently set aside for major maintenance. The way we budget that is the operating costs, the daily, weekly, monthly costs get built into our operating budget, and the Parks Levy is covering that incremental cost now for new assets when they come online, like a new park. However, the major maintenance, when the playground, 15, 20 years from now needs to be replaced, that will need to be some other source, like a bond or some other new revenue source that we currently don't have, because we get about $5 million a year from city council to pay for that activity.
So is there an effort to get?
Patty, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Is there an effort to find another revenue stream? I think the public just can't get their head around this,
Yeah.
You build new assets, but you can't take care of the ones you have, and then by the
The
time.
new one doesn't have.
Right, and the new ones are gonna wear out, and then you're gonna put some new, I mean, it just seems really ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think
No,
the average person, it seems so simple.
Yeah, so this is why in 2019, I'm gonna
Like-
kind of shame her a little bit. She came up with a name, Sustainable Future, Sonia Shemansky. Sarah Huggins has done a lot of the work, as many of their people have since then, of basically showing alternatives to both council and the community of different ways of how park systems are paid for within the state of Oregon. Those are parks districts, food and beverage tax, just general fund allocation, operating levies, bonds. There's a variety of different ways in the state of Oregon of how parks are paid for. To date, we primarily used general fund allocation, parks and levies, and SDCs. But we have not been doing bonds frequently enough to keep up. I mean, that is like a real factual statement for us.
We're on our last project from the 2014 bond, which was relatively small. So, which is why we polled recently to look at whether or not there was an appetite for the community and voters to move forward on a levy and or a bond. So.
And generally that polling gave feedback of a bond or a levy would probably pass, and but probably not both on the same ballot.
All right, so we have two people in line, Claudio, and then going to Alana, but I'm gonna jump down. And Jonathan, just seeing your hand there, Jonathan. Why only looking within the state of Oregon and not looking across park districts nationwide?
So we did look nationwide. It's just a lot of the revenue in the state laws. It's what drives public finance rules. And so we did look, like in Chicago, they have like basically the equivalent of an entertainment tax. It's like a data tax on like Netflix and streaming services that generates a lot of money. It could generate, we did a little calculation, maybe $70 million a year. But do we want to do that? And if you did a campaign on that, I'm sure the tech companies would come to Oregon to greet us. There's like a sweet and beverage tax in different jurisdictions, but normally philanthropic donors give like 20 or $30 million to pass measures like that because sweet and beverage industry shows up and runs against it. So there's a lot of like political realities about trying to pass some of those taxes. And there's just there's preemptions around some things in the state of Oregon that we just can't do. Adding like a tax at the end of a real estate sale, can't do in the state of Oregon. There's different things. So we kind of did that research, but then brought it back to like what's probably feasible within our rules.
Wonderful, thank you for that,
Sure.
because that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and Sarah Huggins would love to give another presentation to anyone who wants to hear about this. So like,
Yeah,
If
there's been a lot of work.
if
on
there's
this
an
area.
appetite, we can totally do that.
Thank you.
And I think Kelly and I have to scoot out. We're due somewhere at 6. I do love talking about this. I feel the energy. It would be really interesting to stay. If we have to dip out for this meeting, we will figure out the right way to stay connected, make sure information is moving back and forth in a timely way. So a lot more to come on that. Anything else from you before we head out?
No, just wonderful to be here with you, and I will try to stay connected like I was before, because I really enjoy your thoughtful questions and concerns. So
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
your
for
time.
fitting us in and hosting and for the. Of course.
Claudio, do you? Johnson?
Yeah, you know,
I just wanted, he's been waiting for a while, so Claudio, and then I have Jonathan and then Alana.
yeah, actually, Todd hit most of the points that I wanted to make, but I do want to note that when, you know, development isn't just driving SDCs, it's also driving additional general fund revenues. And in theory, and this is sort of a hope for a brighter future where, you know, as one city, we are able to develop sort of a more coherent investment profile, both in terms of like new investments and how we take care of them. You know, when that new construction goes up, it's not just generating SDCs, it's also generating considerable amount of new real property tax. And it would be appropriate for that to support the major maintenance, replacement, daily maintenance and care of the new assets that we put in service. So I think that we've got a lot of, you know, that's another area. I think that we talk a lot about, you know, how we quote can't take care of what we've got. We can't do it with the investment profile that the city has currently established for us. I think that we need to keep in mind that we do have, you know, we've got growth, as Todd mentioned, we've got service gaps, particularly in newer parts of the city, and that it's not an and/or question. It's a matter of balancing, you know, balancing the overall investment profile of the city, so to achieve the sort of desired service levels equitably across the city. So yeah, I think that is the essence of sustainable future and sort of a longer vision. And I think you know, we should be looking at sort of some of the revenues that are being generated by the same things that are generating the revenue for to create those new assets. So.
Thank you, Claudio. Jonathan, are you?
No,
I
I
the same
withdrew.
vein?
I had a question just mainly for like SDC clarity, but I don't think it adds anything to the conversation. So I'd hand down.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Alana.
You may have answered this already, Todd, but I just, as we were talking about funding, I was wondering if there had been any updates on the bond conversation in conversations in City Hall and with the powers that be at all, and if there was anything else that we should know about where those conversations are. I also want to just flag that I think at one point a long while ago, we talked about having Sarah come back to the Financial Sustainability Working Group to talk through those funding options in more detail again, because we have some new folks on that working group who may not have heard them at the level of depth that we had talked about them before there. And I don't know if that happened at a meeting I wasn't at, but it may be worth, if it hasn't happened recently, coming back around to it.
We'd be happy to come back, and Bonnie, maybe you could work with us if you're helping us with the agenda setting, right?
Yeah, that's fine. I was gonna say, I was just about to email Claudio and Jonathan because I am gonna be absent for the May meeting, but maybe Jonathan can take over planning for that. But we can chat about it offline. Thank you.
Sounds good. And I put a link in the chat it's our Parks SDC page, and there's a frequently asked questions link in there if you want to learn more about the SDCs, how it works, how we calculate it, all those kind of things.
So are there any updates on the bond conversation? Has
sorry.
that kind of been for a while?
Yeah, so the statement that we released maybe to the board, and I'll put it in the chat here again, basically is Commissioner Ryan would like to wait, and see what happens with funding measures that are on the May ballot. And see how the results go with that. There's gas tax for PVOT, there's a zoo bond, there's, help me out, what else? Couple of, the new bond for the drainage district, about $150 million. So there's things that are on there. We'll see.
Mostly renewals, but the one is new, isn't it, right?
The drainage district is new, zoo, technically they're selling it as like, it's replacing, but it's new. Gas tax, it's a renewal. And so once we kind of see how that goes, he'd like to kind of see what our position is.
I'm gonna ask a question that doesn't relate to any of this other, but it connects to the director's report. But is there anybody else that has any questions? Because after I ask this question, we're gonna have to move forward on the agenda.
I do, but it's about something future and also not necessarily connected to this.
Is it connected to the report?
Yes, but it's more about the intersection of what a deferred maintenance cost could do in like community childcare, community centers, and the intersection of childcare, like recreation.
Say what you need to say.
Okay, sorry, it's hard to explain. So we've not really talked about this before, but I am interested in how Parks has been, and the Bureau has been in conversations around how they can utilize new funding that's coming in through Multnomah Preschool for All, childcare infrastructure funding on the state level, as the community centers are places within the recreation department to provide childcare for families and community members. And if some of those contracts or funding for those facilities and that programming in the recreational space could be used for deferred maintenance costs and for those community centers at least. And so I know that's not maybe necessarily a conversation we could have now, or if it's something that's been had, but
I'll just say that we actually have broached the subject with Maximo Behrens at our most recent strategy review meeting, and he's going to be bringing it back to his staff who oversee preschool and have been very closely aligned with Multnomah. To date, we have not been eligible for a preschool for all for various reasons, but mostly because we've not wanted to or not been able to expand beyond half day. But now it looks like they're going to revisit half day. So it's like this ongoing conversation. We are aware of that other potential resource to make it a little bit more manageable. And you're absolutely right. Like we would have to make a lot of upgrades to our facilities to be able to support preschool for all. So we're having that conversation. I will say our preschool program, while very popular and in high demand, is a tiny, programmatically is tiny for us. So it's a lot of energy and a lot of resources put towards increasing capacity for something that really only has so much of a potential footprint to expand in. So we're definitely on that.
sorry, that was a very small niche.
I think it's important to talk about. We're gonna make.
We're looking for every source. That's good.
So my question for you, Director Long, in regards to the DEI training. And my question is, are you also incorporating cultural humility training and possibly restorative justice training? Besides,
to my knowledge, neither of those topics are currently being offered as part of the DEI training program. We recently lost our DEI training program manager. So I think we're on hold to expand the program, but please share your ideas with Margaret Evans and copy Todd because we will be hiring a replacement. And I think there's going to be room to think about what that overall program looks like in the topics that we're covering.
yeah, because there is criticism around bias training being white-centered. And unfortunately, when you have a multiracial group, that means there's a percentage that doesn't really engage in some of this work. So I look forward to that conversation. So thank you for that. And we're going to move along to the working group reports. Board Affairs Working Group, do you have anything to report in, or are there any questions from the board?
Nothing more.
Thank you so much, Casey. Land use and
Jessica.
infrastructure. Oops,
I just have my hand raised.
Jessica, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I know that Director Long had sent me an email and I noticed in the report a question around some candidates forums, and I wasn't sure if we wanted to dive into some history there, or I just wanted to also flag that I would love to maybe meet with this group and continue that conversation to see what we might want to develop together.
Yes,
And
let's
this-
let's have a conversation offline with that and then maybe bring it back to the meeting next month. Does that work for
Okay.
you?
Yeah, that's great. Is that
Alright,
something that
invite
happens
her to
in
Board
this
of
meeting
Affairs.
or totally separate?
Or I can invite her to Board Affairs.
Yes,
in
I
April.
think that might be a good place.
Jessica,
suggest
I'll
Board
send you,
Affairs.
I'll send you an invitation. We'll send you an invitation to come to the Board Affairs Working Group. That would be a good platform to have that discussion. That's where we started it. So, great.
Okay, perfect. And I have information from the 2020 forum that we did that I might send over just so you have some background information before we start talking.
Great, thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Land
Okay.
use and infrastructure working group, anything to report in? Or are there any questions from the board? I don't believe a report was submitted. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll
Uh,
have to circle back with
There
with
was-
Matt.
It
There was a,
Yeah, there
It was
was one and I
submitted,
sent
yeah.
Go
it
ahead,
in a
Matt.
secondary email, sent after.
It was sent after, okay. All right, thank you so much for submitting that. Financial sustainability working group, anything to report in, or are there any questions from the board?
No further report. Just to clarify, Claudio, we had talked about writing a letter to support the accounting methodology so that you wouldn't have to go and have that voted on every time. And I noticed you mentioned that it seemed to be supported when we were discussing the larger issues related to financial sustainability. I just wanted to verify that that was the case and if there was any further support desired from either the working group or the board as a whole.
Yeah, Bonnie, thank you for bringing that up. I think that given the CBO review and the lack of discussion at council today, I think we're in a good place. And so if anything changes, we'll certainly let you know. But I think I think we're good.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Moving forward with the community engagement working group. Anything to report in, or are there any questions from the board? Thank you, community engagement working group. Moving to the recreation, arts, culture, and nature working group. Anything to report in, or any questions from the board? Thank you so much, folks. That concludes our working group report. Moving to the Portland Parks Foundation report, Jessica. Please go forward.
Yes, hi. I just have some updates on our projects and programs, and also would love Jonathan Beckert is going to start in May as our ex officio Parks Board member on our board. So thank you, Jonathan. Just a reminder that you're a voting member, so it's a little more exciting. And yeah, so that will be moving forward. And then on our program side, I've reported this several times, but just want to remind everybody that we have a leadership award nominations that are open until April 15th. And we also have our small grants that are open until April 15th, which are partially funded through the community partnership program. Thank you, Bonnie, who's going to be sitting on our small grants review committee, and Dr. Corbin and Director Long for sitting on our leadership nomination or leadership selection. So I do just encourage you, if you haven't looked at these awards and you're interested in nominating or small grants, please share them out. There's a follow-up just with the links. And my last reminder, I think or actually I might be able to push you one more time in May, but May 16th is our Friends and Allies Summit. We usually fill a room with around 200 partners. It's an evening of celebration. It's a great way to just really get to engage more with friends and partners who are out there doing the work. So I highly recommend registering. It's free. It's at the Laura Host Club, and should be a good time. And then I also, there's a few other things. So I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, but the foundation is not doing Paseo this year. Our downtown BIPOC-led festival in the South Park Box. However, Land Back, which was programmed at Szymanski Park, is going to be continuing this year. It's something that has been part of Paseo for the last 2 years. And I've been working directly with Amanda Stubitz, who programmed it last year and the year before, and is kind of taking this and growing it out of Paseo. So that's kind of an exciting thing that's continuing and being able to grow without kind of the boundary of Paseo. So that will be the last weekend in July 28th or 29th. She's still determining the dates, but stay tuned for that. And then PPF is sort of growing its fiscal sponsorship program. We currently now have 3 fiscal sponsorships that we're supporting their finite periods of time. We'll be providing some fiscal sponsorship for Land Back in July. We also are working with People of Color Outdoors who are in transition for their fiscal sponsorship into their 501c3. So we're providing support there. And then we're again providing support with the Tongan American Resource Committee for Tonga Day this year. Any of you who are just, uniquely interested in fiscal sponsorships, I encourage you to reach out because we are thinking more deeply about what a fiscal sponsorship program looks like instead of these one-off ad hoc fiscal sponsorships. And then on the project side of things, the Elk Fountain, we are at 100% design, but we have one little piece that there's in contention between the structural engineers and on the design team and the Portland Water Bureau. And so we are working through that this week with the hope of moving forward. Or not the hope, we will be moving forward, but there's one little piece within the code and the design. So we're at the finish line. We're just not quite over it yet in terms of gifting the designs to the city and moving into procurement. And then you saw several notes in the board packet around the playground replacement campaign. That's in full go mode. We are looking at the 3 playgrounds, Raymond, George Park, and Portland Heights Park, and working with PP&R and the kids outside for George, as well as community engagement around Raymond Park and Portland Heights Park. And we hope to complete the fundraising campaign in 2024. And it sounds like construction for the new playgrounds at Raymond and Portland Heights will be in 2025 and George Park in 2026. And that's all. And I will have that all in your inbox too, in case you want it in writing.
Thank you so much. We have 5 minutes. If there's any questions from the board members, please raise your hands or turn your attempts to the side. All right, thank you so much, Jessica. Appreciate that. And we're going to be moving forward to the Natural Resource Service Delivery Work Plan, if I can talk. And
Yeah, I'll kick us off. As I mentioned, we've got Lauren Marino here from Catalysis, who's going to lead us through a presentation and an update. But I also want to acknowledge we've got Don Uchiyama, who's the Director of Bureau of Environmental Services and our partner organization on the line, as well as Sheena Anderson, who together with Laura Lehman, who's down the behind the end of the table, have been project managing this work for well over a year. So I just want to note that they're here and available for questions should anything come up. And also just to remind the group, both Ali Berman and Dr. Corbin have been serving as representatives of the Parks Board on this work. And so today we're going to be talking about the workshop that was held that they attended on the 22nd. And then just provide you all with an update and hopefully get some feedback either now or soon thereafter.
Just really quickly, Ally and I did get together some speaking notes. So Ally, if you would like to say anything before, or we can wait till after the presentation. Because we were fortunate enough to actually sit through the last two meetings. Let me know what best works for you, Ally.
I think it would be great after, because they might cover quite a bit and not have to do much at all. So let's see.
All right, sounds good, Ally. Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
All right, we'll see what I can do. So I'm Lauren Moreno, and as Director Long shared, I'm with Catalysis, and we have been supporting the Natural Resource Service Delivery project. And as you know, we held a workshop, gosh, was that not March 22nd? That wasn't last week. I think it's been a busy few weeks, a couple weeks ago, where we brought together subject matter experts and reps from various advisory boards, from PUB, from Urban Forestry Commission, and from this board to contribute and provide feedback on the Natural Resource Service Delivery Work Plan. So maybe we can say a little bit, I have a slide, a little bit more about the workshop. Great. So our purpose for this 2 hours that we had together in person primarily was to collect input on the current work plan, which brings us to, we spent time, a fair amount of time together, really grounding in what is the work plan. Let's be clear together and make sure we're all on the same page about what the work plan is and where we are at in that timing. So we acknowledged and reminded ourselves that the work plan is due April 30th to the CAO, and that the work plan itself will not lay out the changes that will be made to natural resource service delivery, but it will include the process to get to those recommendations. And this is, of course, in response to the 2 city resolutions. I have to write down the numbers because I don't have them in memorized, but 37609 and 37635. Really with speaking to integrating natural resource service delivery and the management specifically of natural areas and trees. So we wanted to put this in really plain language when we were here there in the room together, that the work plan is how we will figure out what must change, who will be involved, and when we will do it. And we really wanted input from this broad group to put that insight together and make sure that this work plan represented the best thinking we have on how we can make these important decisions. So a little bit more about what we did together on the next slide. We had some discussion and really grounded ourselves in common definitions and just making sure we were in the same place. And then we had an exercise where we asked participants to review the major ideas that were in the current natural resource service delivery work plan draft, and then add new elements, comments, questions, messy thoughts or clean thoughts, whatever it may be, to what must be considered and added for the next draft. We framed those asks in 3 main buckets. So that thinking about the inputs we needed for the work plan, what information or resources do we need, the process, how should this work be done, who should be a part of the process, and the outcomes. What must result from the work? What must we have at the end? And we set up stations around the room and had kind of pre-populated stickies that reflected the major ideas already in the current draft. So we didn't need to, try to do track changes with a group of 20 people. And then people could look at those ideas, add to them, and add layers. And what did we learn? Go to the next slide. a lot. It was really great. It was a really active participation. I think what was interesting is in the discussion leading up to this exercise, a lot of the comments, really they started this conversation because they were already contributing to these three things around process, inputs, and outcomes. And there was a lot of alignment across what we were hearing from different perspectives and different bureaus. I believe that you were sent, this body was sent the full summary that has the actual transcription of all of the stickies that were contributed. So you've seen that. I have one kind of quick slide here just to show some of the highlights that we saw that emerged. So this is not a comprehensive look, but some of the kind of the bigger ideas that came out of the workshop and maybe some of the things that were new that were really being added to the work plan. So related to inputs and processes, there was a very strong sense, a need to clarify the problem we were working to solve, have a really strong problem statement to clearly define the terms and the scope of this work, to expand the inventory assessment and analysis of current activities. And there was lots of detail, different recommendations about what that might look like and what that should include, to ensure meaningful engagement with partners, staff, advisory boards, and community, to clarify expectations and roles for all stakeholders, and really recognizing that they are not all the same, that the roles would be particular to different stakeholders, but to make sure that was really transparent and clear ahead of time. As well as clarifying the decision-making processes and authorities. What does that look like as this work plan is implemented? And then, of course, to ensure clear, timely, transparent communication about process and decisions throughout. There was also a lot of alignment and excitement about what must result from this work, from the work plan around the outcomes. So a very strong recognition and excitement about developing a common vision and goals for natural resource service delivery. And I think linking that, there was a recognition that this is where there is the greatest opportunity for community input. A strong desire to this work plan should help us figure out how we could enhance climate resiliency. It should include structural and non-structural recommendations. And then there should be a really clear implementation strategy that includes sustainable funding, strategy, timeline and phasing, including what might be incremental changes, change management approach, and communications approach. As well as quite a bit more. I think the input that was gathered had covered all levels of detail, from really concrete things to big ideas, and there was a lot of alignment, I think, across the conversation. So I think we'll pause here. We do have some next steps that we want to share, but I think first, I think this would be a great time. We'd love to hear from Dr. Corbin and Ali Berman with your perspective on the workshop and what you learned and what you want to share here.
Thank you. Ali, I'm gonna kick it to you first.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, 20 plus people in a room together for 2 hours. And so it went really fast. The first hour was really talking about the process of the process of the process. So we didn't get to have conversations as much about what you're seeing in these feedback highlights. It was more putting stickies down. So I'm excited to get back together and being able to discuss or to see where that goes, to be able to have more conversations about it. But there was a lot of really great energy, smart people in the room, all working on this. So I'm excited to move forward.
So I have some criticism, but in the sense of hopefully making the process stronger as we move forward, especially thinking about the communications piece. We understand that people have to meet particular goals and they tend to be numeric, but we also need to couple that with narratives that communities understand the benefits that they're going to actually get from this process. So thinking through that, The other thing that I would like to point out is, I would love to see what other cities are doing this type of work, because it almost feels like we're recreating the wheel. And it's very hard to wrap your mind around the whole process. And so just giving some models. And so one of the requests was to do research. What other cities are doing this work? How are they organizing it? And what are the lessons and some of the outcomes that we can glean from them and see what the Portland model could look like. And then I think the last thing that I would like to point out is, this idea that a lot of this is already new. People have, these boroughs have been working together for quite some time, and understanding like where are these opportunities to strengthen it is going to be really important, because we've had some feedback from community members that somehow Parks is going to take it over or somebody else is going to take it over. So trying to really get that communication together so people really understand what this process could look like. Then I think what I'm going to finish with is I'm really going to be a stickler with this glossary of terms to make sure that we're talking with each other and not over or across each other. But I think it was a really good process, and I think there was an opportunity to really have some discussions, and we got to learn that I believe some of the staff were able to do some visioning work, and I would love to hear what their vision was, even though we gleaned some of it through this process. So I'm like Ally, I'm looking forward to the next leg of that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe I'll ask Laura to speak to the next steps that are coming up, and then we'd love to open that up for question, but the next steps may answer some of the questions that are bubbling.
We'll see. So what staff is doing, what we're working on right this minute is integrating the input that came from that workshop on the 22nd into the work plan and the draft work plan and the task force, so we can create an updated draft work plan. This coming Friday, we have the second workshop that has been referred to with that, to bring back that same group. That's going to be an opportunity for staff and the project team to get any needed clarity on any of the comments that we received and discuss any that need further discussion. And then I think we're hoping to hear, words of wisdom and direction for the future also at that workshop. So that'll be Friday. And then we will incorporate any additional clarity we get then. And we're planning to share out a revised draft work plan on April 18th. That's the same day as the Urban Forestry Commission and the Portland Utility Board meetings that were mentioned earlier. Those meetings, they're going to receive a presentation. It'll be very similar to this presentation, but we will be sending out the new draft work plan to all of the folks from those three advisory bodies on that day, so that you folks all have a chance to take a look at the changes that we've made and provide any feedback. And we're going to ask that that feedback be sent back April 24th, and we'll provide all that information at the time and who to send it to and all the information you would need. And then after that time, we'll be integrating that final input into a final draft. The Bureau directors will have an opportunity to review. We'll be briefing commissioners, I think the week of April 22nd. And then we will deliver the work plan to the CAO by April 30th. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Laura.
Great. So want to go ahead and open it up to the board? All right, board members, if you have any questions or concerns, hands up or your name tents up, go ahead and start calling on you. Or is there anything that you would like to add, Ally, before we start?
No, I think I'm curious to hear if folks have questions. I'll also say it's a strange thing, right? We're not talking about what it's going to ultimately look like. We're talking about a process to get what it's ultimately going to look like. So it's sort of a, it's planning for planning.
Planning to plan.
Yeah, there's only so much that we're going to be
really good at it.
Yeah, so I'll just say that, right? Like you want it to like move really far and you're planning to plan. So there's that.
Go ahead.
So it sounds like the meeting was attended by a lot of staff. And so everybody is probably looking from the lens of the kind of bureaucratic process of how to do things. And earlier we were talking about why can't we use this budget to take care of this budget, that, all that. In what way we ensure that this is not just trying to figure out a process to design a process? And how does it trickle down to really test the effectiveness of when the rubber meets the road, the people in the community? How would that level of planning and processing benefit the people on the ground? At what point they actually talk to each other? Or by the time the people on the ground see this, like, well, I can't understand this. How does that relate? How is it gonna relate to the effectiveness of the benefit there?
Well, I think, if I could just respond, I think that the work plan and all of the component parts, the task list and all of the items really do call out engagement with folks outside of the people who've been in the room. And I think that's where we hope to answer that question. And a lot of the input that we did receive from the advisory bodies actually did come from that lens and was a little bit further out from like the city perspective, the practitioner perspective. I mean, Dr. Corbin just already said like this just a few minutes ago, where her concerns are and where she hopes that we're ensuring that we spend some focus on. So it's got to be reflected in the work plan and the task list, but we're not there yet, I guess is the best answer. But I think that a lot of the feedback really underscored the importance of doing that engagement work, including, as Dr. Corbin put it, like making sure that they understand, the community understands how this can impact them, right? It can be very technical as we're talking about it as practitioners, city and other professionals who understand the concepts. But we do have to figure out a way to be able to interpret what we're talking about to the community as we go out and we do engagement.
If I can jump in, I think one of the things folks are struggling is what is that North Star? What does that look like? And hearing that staff had the opportunity to do some scenario planning, to do the vision work of what does it look like in real time? How do we imagine an urban ecology system working, and then working backwards to say, how do we operationalize? I would love to know what that means, because I think that helps it make it a little bit more tangible. That what are we organizing for is the question. What does the city need? And then coming in without that, it's really hard to kind of get your hands and your mind around what does that mean to plan for a plan, right? And so again, looking at this next meeting, really trying to get that information could be very helpful. And so because we are representatives of the board, if you have questions that we can bring into the meeting with, I absolutely welcome that as well. So don't think, we're the only ones that are going to be engaging this. So if you see something, please send it along and we'll bring it into the meeting.
And I'll chime in too. Good evening, everyone. Donnie Chiama, BES Director. Thank you for the comments and questions, and a special thanks to Allie and Dr. Corbin for their participation in these group discussions. And for this last question, I just wanted to weigh in that I really appreciate the last, I don't know who was speaking, but I really appreciate that last answer about being able to see in Portland, a real prioritization of this work, and a real feeling of this is a part of our identity, that natural resources and green spaces and the great resources we have already are protected and maintained, and that we're expanding the system in in a, you know, bold and meaningful way. So I hope all residents, all Portlanders can feel that commitment in our community as an ultimate vision and goal. And then as maybe more of a short-term logistical outcome or something that people would feel on the ground is you don't have to be confused about who's doing what, who's providing what service, that it's clear our roles and responsibilities, and there's kind of one-stop shopping for our community so that they know who is responsible and that we're delivering the services in a really integrated way. So I think there's the big vision and our identity, and then I also think there's just the logistics of who are you going to call and who's going to respond and who's responsible. So thank you again for the good question.
Ally, please go ahead.
One of the things that's been interesting to me is, right, as we're going through this process, Natural Resources has the opportunity to create a brand new brand identity for itself and how they communicate with the public, how they engage, how they talk about issues. And that's one of the things I'm hoping, because communications, the plan is a part of what they're talking about now in terms of even the process. But that brand identity needs to start forming now through this and how they're engaging people and talking in a way that is meeting people where they are, using modern mediums and using more modern ways of speaking, which aren't honestly so government speak. So those all, like, I'm hoping folks are thinking about that, and there's a larger vision for what it means to really connect with the public in a way that is meeting them where they are. And again, creating that brand identity and starting that process now versus waiting for a thing to form, because how we engage now will inform what people think of this new entity, whatever it looks like.
Thank you, Ally. Others' thoughts? Alana, go ahead.
I just want to thank you and Ally for putting the time into being a part of this. I know that there were a lot of questions when this first came up and a lot of concerns and areas of discomfort amongst folks on the board, and having a process. Thank you to folks at the city for ensuring the process included the boards, and having the two of you there. I think we're seeing fewer questions because those concerns are actually being raised in the process.
Hope that's true. And if there are questions later, because this is a lot of information, again, feel free to email them my way. Director Long, please go ahead.
It sounds like we're closing out on this topic, so I'll just.
Oh, I'm gonna start something soon, but go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say that, as Dr. Corbin mentioned, we encourage and appreciate additional feedback. I want to note that we do have, while we do have an April 30th deadline to deliver the work plan, we've made it very clear that this work is pretty fluid, right? And that the plan can and should evolve as we do our work. So just to be mindful of the deadline in terms of our final product. And also just wanted to thank both Dr. Corbin and Ally for participating, and also to Dawn, my colleague in crime, and to Shana and Laura, who've really just done a tremendous job project managing this work. That was meant to be a couple of months and turned out to be well over a year. So.
And can I just call out that there were other staff? I mean, there was board members in the room, but it was a mix of also park staff and BES staff and all sorts, and some of whom are in this room right now. So a big thank you to everybody who it was great to have a mix of staff and community members.
Absolutely. I just want to throw this out there when I said I was going to start something. This was an opportunity to shape change, right? And when you think of it as an opportunity to shape change, what is the change that you want to see within Portland? What is your biggest imagination? Because what we don't want to do is think about the budget and then fall short of what we actually need for this city. I study green cities. I also study sci-fi, and putting that together for me is future green cities. What does that look like for Portland? I think about green corridors. So it's not just street trees, but there's whole new pathways. And what does that mean for management practices? What does that mean for biodiversity? What does that mean for less people ending up in the ER because of heat exhaustion? What does that mean as far as numbers of trees, which means less children are going into the ER for asthma, right? So again, thinking about the numbers and what we want to do around planting and thinking about resilience and sustainability, but also looking at the actual impacts on our daily lives and how that can actually become better from this process. And so think big, but also, you know, understand that there is a troop of people that really love doing this work. That's their heart for it. It's creating public spaces. And I love public spaces because this is where you can come out, meet your neighbors and build community. So it's not just technical, it's actually growing very important parts of our lives within the city. So think big and, you know, and show up and give us your ideas, and let's see how we can make Portland the place that everybody is jealous of because of our green spaces and us being the #1 green city in the United States. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but I think this is a great opportunity, and I hope we can do it with a type of like love and excitement versus how are we gonna pay for this? You know, the money will come because I think, you know, people's hearts are there. So stepping off my soapbox for that. Other thoughts? You have a couple minutes until 6:45 where we'll open it up for public comments. I'm gonna start assigning homework soon. Ecotopia, it's a great book that actually takes place in Portland. Talks about a future green city. David Butler's Parable of the Sower. I will go on for hours. It is a graphic novel and it is also a traditional novel. Going to some cartoons. Anything by Miyazaki. If you want to talk about green space and future opportunities. I'm still waiting to see Boy and the Heron, so. Because he's gonna be the last one, but fingers crossed he'll eke out one more. Chris, go ahead.
Okay, this is also outside of what we've been speaking about and also has to do with childcare, just because I work in my daily life in this very much, and there's a big need that we have because the entire state of Oregon is a childcare desert. But outdoor preschool is going to be coming within the next couple of years, and I do think it is an opportunity, even though it is a smaller portion of the recreation space. And there's some opportunities that we could engage with outdoor preschool in the green spaces of Portland Parks and Recreation and make that more accessible to families and children in the city. I don't know if Maximo's team is working on that as well. I know on the state level, we are just having work groups come together on our rulemaking process of what that could look like. But I think that is a good opportunity of re-envisioning what green spaces mean for children and children development as we move forward into the future. And that's maybe more of a pie in the sky idea and throwing that out there while we have a few minutes.
It exists in the world. We just need to bring it locally. So I love that. Alana.
Just building on Chris's 2 comments about preschool, I do think that if Parks is able to move into the space of offering more preschool opportunities through Preschool for All and some of the other programs that tie into our publicly subsidized preschool programs, that does open up other funding streams. The state has been doing a lot of investment in preschool spaces. So whether it's upgrading our community centers or further investments in our green space outdoors for things like forest schools, there may be some opportunities there to bring in additional resources if we're able to offer some of those programs that tie into public subsidies.
Absolutely. And I actually have a list of some of the, you know, opportunities at different government scales. Justice 40 initiatives, like how do we bring in like climate change, clean energy, affordable and sustainable housing and other investments. Oregon's 30x30 initiative. You have the PSEF funding, you know, the EPA, environmental justice actually has some new language in it. So there's funding that can actually prop up a lot of these opportunities. And so there is money out there. And the question is, how do we make sure that it gets funneled into these maybe new practices and these new ways of shoring up our educational system, our children, and future Portlanders. Erin, go ahead.
Thanks. You know, just the talk about preschool, I think we've had some conversations over the years since I've been on the board about Parks preschool offerings. And I guess I'm kind of curious, maybe from Director Long, I feel like if I remember correctly, there's been different opinions over time about Parks' role in offering childcare. And I'm wondering what the current leadership is thinking around that, and if there are any discussions going on about I mean, you did talk a little bit earlier about maybe expanding beyond half-day preschool, but it's come up a few times this meeting, and it's definitely an interest of mine as well. So I'd be curious to hear maybe from Parks leadership about their thoughts on that.
Thank you, Erin. As I said before, our preschool is very highly sought after and in high demand. So to me, that speaks to both the childcare desert that Chris alluded to, but it also speaks to the expertise and professionalism of our staff, who are highly actually both educated and experienced in elementary education. Where we have an issue is in our capacity. We only have so many community centers. We only have so much space. And so we have not been able to grow, to my knowledge, very much at all. Parks has, as many of you know in this room and on this call, has been many things to many people, right? Like we do it all. And there's some mindsets that, perhaps minimizing the focus and focusing on and doing a few things really well is a good focus. And certainly that has been my mindset in the past. Having the Parks Levy allowed us some breathing room. And so I think, my focus has changed a little bit in that regard, but I generally come from a school of thinking more efficiently, like, do we need to do 20 things mediocre? Maybe not, So that's my perspective. Like I haven't made a decision about whether or not we should expand preschool or not. I've only asked that Maximo have his staff do due diligence about what it would look like. There's also opportunities, we have other facilities other than the community centers where we operate. We have other facilities that could be brought into the preschool for all mix, like could be leased by other providers. Like there's a lot of different ways to sort of to look at this problem. So I think it's a little early. Like I said, I think we're just starting to look at it, but I do think, Chris, with your expertise, perhaps there's an opportunity for you to come and sort of meet with Maximo and his team. I'm pretty sure they're aware of many of the opportunities that are already out on the street, but you clearly have some intel about, what's being discussed. And like maybe we can just talk strategy. And Maximo is here, and perhaps he'd like to come off mute and show his face if he has something to share.
I do want to say, Maximo, if you are here for 1 second, that just to make sure that we're in compliance to the agenda, that is there anybody here for public comments? If so, please raise your hand if you're online. I don't believe there's anybody in person. All right, doesn't look like we have somebody for public comments, so we can keep on going. Thank you for your patience.
And I just saw Ally's chat.
Yes.
We don't have outdoor school in the sense of preschool, but we have an environmental education program.
Outdoor school through the Multnomah County.
Isn't that Portland Public?
I think Ally's asking about outdoor school,
Outdoor
like
school
the program.
Yeah, the way it
yeah.
was, the way Chris phrased it sounded like they were gonna bring outdoor school, the official outdoor school that's, you know, for fifth and sixth graders to preschool, so maybe I'm misunderstanding.
No, it's a different type of licensing of like an outdoor preschool structure that currently Washington State has that, but we don't have it right now, but we have been tasked by the legislature to create a licensing structure of what that would look like for health and safety regulation.
We do, just for your edification, we have the preschool that's based out of Southwest Community Center is a nature-based after school because of its proximity to Gabriel Park's natural area. It's just a little fun fact. Maximo.
Yeah. So as Director Long mentioned, we and I know there was a couple comments over there. I'll try to touch base on what I've heard, but for our preschool program, as Director Long mentioned, we do have, I believe it's called the Sprouts Academy out of Southwest Community Center. And so that is an outdoor focused preschool program. And that one is specifically, as was mentioned, because of its proximity to the 90-acre park that it's in location to. Not all of our facilities have access or adjacent to those facilities. And so, but Southwest had the opportunity for us to be able to offer that program. And we're continuing those conversations under Preschool for All. We do have a staff liaison that is working with the Preschool for All program, going over all the items that were mentioned earlier that we're continuing to track, and both the program structure as well as facility needs and things that are happening overall with the county. And then we are working on existing programming right now, such as our day camps, summer camps, winter camps, our spring break camps, where we are doing curriculum engagement, different types of activities with those. And we also know that childcare is also a service that that also helps to provide. And we have been and continuing to, and we're going to expand even further this summer, the before and after care portions of those programs to be able to provide opportunities for parents, guardians, and people working not necessarily traditional hours to have more opportunity to drop off early, to be able to pick up later, to really making sure that we're just providing more enrichment of those existing programs to really make sure that we are continuing to meet the needs. And that's feedback that we've received from the community of saying, you know, they would participate in those existing programs if they had opportunity to be able to have those program adjustments offered even more to be able to help their participation. So we've been responding that way as well. And we have a lot more in the hopper too. So we can always come and provide some more specific detailed information and follow up as well wherever there might be questions.
Oh, sorry, that's all.
All right, so Ann, please go ahead.
I really appreciate Chris brought this topic up. For one, I really truly believe in investment in young children, because that really sets the course of the future of the society. Is there a way we can maybe have a kind of presentation package for the board to understand? Several times we heard that we're going to respond to the needs, and are there some data here that we can understand better? What exactly, when we talk about what are the needs? there are always gonna be young kids. There are always gonna be family who need support. And then in terms of demographics, geographically, the facility, how many kids are we able to provide this kind of a variety of programs and the throughout the year, the season, the age group, who are our partners? PP, the Portland Public School or community-based organization. What is that whole infrastructure that, how far are we meeting our goals? And of course, it gets back to where's the money? And where are we? Where can we measure our kind of success and where do we get stuck? And then so that is, I think investment to our youngest population is most rewarding investment, and how much are we pushing into that pool? So we as grown-ups, not just gonna keep hearing we don't have enough. What is it that we're measuring here?
Well, I think this is a complicated thing. I can connect with Director Long and her staff because I think there is a combination of Portland Parks and Recreation data, what the service population is for the smaller preschool programs, but also what the need and unmet need is that we have, and that data that we have on a state level for the Portland metro area. What complicates this is that for the early learning spaces is not actually part of the K through 12 system. So the early learning space is 90% privately funded. There's only 10% of it that's actually publicly funded. So it's a very small sliver of funds. So the state is really trying to invest more public funds into the infrastructure for early learning and care and for childcare providers, whether that's the infrastructure, workforce development, and professional development. Congress on a federal level is also taking a lot of action on this because it's a nationwide problem. And so there's been significant federal investment even in the last couple of years that is then blending down to the state. And then we are having to make decisions on how that goes to local infrastructure for folks to make those decisions and the different types of providers, because it's a different regulatory structure than the K through 12 system, and how we work with providers for giving early learning and care and childcare. There's different data points that we're looking at because they tend to be smaller early learning environments that serve children and families. So all that to say is I think it's a combination of data that we would need to pull from the state level service area and the smaller sliver of the pie that the Portland Parks and Recreation Department actually has within preschool and the preschool programs that they do serve, and what those demographics are, to look more into what the need is. Sorry if I stole anyone's thunder on that.
No, I think that's everything that you said, co-signing. I think it's all important. And I think the other thing that we need to also consider, especially bringing it back to the natural resource service delivery work plan, is also thinking multi-generationally. Right? We have to think about like these transition situations. You lose a lot of young people after 18 to like 30. What are they doing in the park? How do we have elders and young people in the park? How do we have adult play equipment, like climbing walls and things like that? Not that it has to be, everything needs to be done by Parks and Recreation, but when we're thinking about this natural delivery area, where are these spaces of play that can be, maybe thinking through gray and green infrastructure and having these sort of play opportunities throughout the city, right? When we only focus on children, which children are important. I'm not gonna say children are not important, just like I think trees are important, but how do we think through multi-generational access and engagement within these spaces? And making it meaningful for everybody in Portland. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And also probably try to hook that back into if there's anything that you wanted to wrap up regarding the natural resource service delivery work plan. Because we are about 5 minutes before the
Got a couple
weekend.
of rabbit holes.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that was a really great discussion and we just appreciate everyone's involvement and we look forward to a great shop this Friday.
And for questions that have came out of this meeting, can that be integrated into the work plan and thinking through that with the other staff that are gonna be there? They know, thinking through sustainability and resilience is also part of the work plan. Putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yes.
All right,
so. You're looking at me, but I couldn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
just thinking about the conversation that we just had, how do we fold this into the work plan or even having a dialogue about it with the other staff and the other members of when we're doing the next workshop.
Well, what I would say is throughout this discussion and all the discussions that we've had, like I've been sitting over here taking notes about these important points that are coming up. And a lot of the feedback that we've received, including a lot of the feedback that came from the workshop we've been talking about, is not necessarily feedback that needs to go into the work plan, but it's pieces that we need to carry with us as we go through the process. And so this conversation that's been happening right now, I've been recording over here and we'll add into that the kind of the documents we're building to make sure that we don't lose track of those pieces that we do need to carry forward as we start having these conversations. So I think that's what I would say to that.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah, thank you.
how do we keep on looping us back into and having these conversations? So Chris, thank you so much for broaching that.
Sorry.
No, I think we have the time and that's what we're here for. So we have a couple more minutes, unless there's any other discussions that need to be had. We can conclude the meeting. Do I have a motion to conclude the meeting, adjourn? Do we have a second?
Second.
All those that are in favor of adjourning at 6:57, please raise your hand. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any abstentions. All right, thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.